Small but intense. I hope this is my water. I'll know soon. I usually lick around the top so I can ID it. So, I suspect, it being a small group, most of you are somewhat familiar with my past and my sordid past, and the history that I have in the animation industry. I do a lot of cons where I am certainly a part of the sort of the Sailor Moon entourage, if you will. But I honestly, and no ego intended, I am as proud of work that I've done outside of the Sailor Moon milieu as I am from within it. I can, very, very briefly tell you that my beginnings were in the 80s, a long time ago now, I guess, at the cusp of animation, that homegrown animation, starting in North America. Most of you, I suspect, know that I'm a Torontonian, and that's north of the 49. And we fought for it, damn it. We fought for it. Animation was, a lot of it burgeoned in Toronto in the early 80s. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Rock and Rule and some of the very early animated films that are now considered iconic. And a little company started with 3 owners and a lady who was their casting person, bookkeeper, coordinator, blah, 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 did everything but own the company. And that was called Nelvana. And, okay, you know Nelvana? Fabulous little group. I mean, still sort of in existence today, but under the umbrella of a company called Chorus Entertainment, which is this vast octopus of communications industries. Nelvana was really, really wonderful. As I say, I cut my animation teeth with Nelvana in the days when it was very, very different than it is today. Today, the entire, I don't mean to sound cynical in any way, but it's very, very cutthroat, and very dog-eat-dog, and very, very competitive. And in those days, and maybe a lot of life was very different, and animation in that industry was a microcosm of that, but it was very relaxed, very easy, a different kind of respect for talent than there is today. You didn't have to be a marquee name in order to get a lead in an animated series or an animated feature. And it was purely on your talents as a voice performer that got you work. And a great deal to do with a good attitude, as opposed to being, I'm convinced now that some performers get work because they're jerks. And because they bring attitude, and producers will say, I like him, he's edgy. Well, to me, if I have an opportunity, and I do a lot of casting now, and I do a great deal of voice directing, as you know, and you know what, that kind of edgy, I still don't have time for it. I like a nice, there's enough talent out there that you don't have to hire people like that unless, of course, I'm, bottom of the totem pole. I'm told I've got to work with someone who's not one of them, I'm going to use those bad words anymore, who's simply not of my mindset. I work with them because I know that if I say no, I'm the one that's going to get fired, not them. So, it's just as easy to have a cast of really, really dedicated people, honorable people, respectful people, and people who are dedicated to commitment and to producing a really, really good ensemble product. You don't have to look outside, big names aside, of course. Now, I can tell you lots about me. God knows I can talk for days about myself, but I'm going to throw it open to you. Why don't you, any of you who know some of my history, please feel free to question anything I've done. I'll give you as honest an answer as I can. If there are those who don't know and want some fill-in information on me and my career, please feel free to ask that as well. I'm open to anything. Not all at once.
stuff as a guidebook because he was Basil and Baba. And I recently had a stint with nostalgia because when I was a kid I watched the Babar series, and so I went back and watched the entire series again.
Yeah, a Babar was one, again, that was Nelvana, and early Nelvana. Beautiful, beautiful animation, very simple animation, great stories, very simplistic. And thank you for the recognition. Yeah, being, I can talk about a couple of things in relation to that really, really pleased me. One, and I'll talk about that. You don't even know what I was going to say, but I'll go in two directions at the same time if I can. One, the best roles to play for me are the bad guy's sidekick in animation, right? The bad guy's sidekick is always like a nice guy. He always is. He tries to be bad. He's always told it. We've got to do this and we've got to do that and kill and maim and fight and you're right. You're right. We've got to do that. And then again, he walks away and sort of cries in the alley because he doesn't really want to be bad. And if I can extrapolate on the Basil, the one I did before that was, to me, the quintessential character, and that was Beastly from Care Bears. And Beastly from Care Bears was like, I mean, everybody that saw him wanted to take him home, right? He'd have been great, even if it was just a pet, right? But again, it was no hard saying, Beastly, oh, he has new heart, we'll get them, right? Oh, I don't want to do that, right? And that was, pardon me, and Basil was very much the same, only in a sort of in a non-cartoon, not quite the cartoony sense. But one of the things that's given those shows such longevity is the fact that, and again to get to the edgy kind of thing that I talked about before, animation today, everybody wants something different. Everybody wants edgy. Everybody wants some different take. Back then, none of the cartoons that were done were politically oriented. There were no sexual innuendos and sexual jokes. They didn't kill themselves to be educational. They didn't hire a child psychiatrist, a child psychologist to analyze every third word to make sure that that everything wasn't done properly, that a word wouldn't or a phrase would not harm a child's psyche. They were just done simply and gently, and it was fun, and let's entertain some people, and people were entertained, and consequently those shows still run. If you look at the retro stations, they continue to run. But you look at something like, I don't know if any of you know a show called Redekai. That was done, we did 2 seasons of it a few years ago. And it was it was like a warrior show, and it was great. It was a real sort of boys action. They call them boys action. That's the category. But it was all, they tried to be edgy. They tried to use really, really sort of current phraseology and current language and current attitude. And it's gone. Once that show stopped selling the toys, once the product was considered finished, once you saw the games in the discount bin at Walmart, that show was gone forever. Because once you saw it, you didn't ever have to see it again. And people who did see it again went, that old stuff. And that's why it's got a very, very short shelf life. And so much does. Because now, and of course, you know that so much is based on product sales now. Sorry guys, I'm looking back at you guys. Forgive me, I didn't mean to exclude you. But so much today is product oriented and sales driven and market share allocated, that it's all money, and it's great, and money's great. I like to work for money. It's got me a house and a car and clothes, and I eat every day. And my house is warm, and that's great, right? But so there's nothing wrong with it. But sometimes I look at it and I think it's not that I'm a socialist by any means, because you work hard, you should make more money. You don't want to work, you don't make money. That's all. But there's a level where greed takes over, where corporation has to make so many billions of dollars that it steals at some point from the product. And it ceases to be the product is a byproduct, really. So I went a long way off your topic, but that's what I do.
Well, I just love listening to you because I'm so picturing all those characters in my head. You have a very distinct voice. And, like, some actors, they just talk and they can do millions of voices, which you never really sounds them.
Right.
You just have a very distinct voice, which is very likable and able to pick out.
Well, thank you. That's good and bad. Sir.
I sketched this up while listening.
Oh.
So, I came out to act, since this is memory, but perhaps you might know the voice of this character.
Oh, Toad.
Now, Richard Fungus.
Oh, Fungus. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Fungus. And that's from... pardon?
Kentucky.
Yeah, well,
Fungus.
Toad, too. Stunt Dogs was so great. God, do any of you know Stunt Dogs? Google it. DAWGS. As a matter of fact, I came that close to bringing my Stunt Dogs jacket. I didn't know how warm or cold it was going to be, so I brought one of those puffy little things. Oh, this is okay when it's warm out, and oh, this is not bad when it's cold out, right? No, if I'd known it was going to be still chilly, like where I am from the northern climes, I'd have brought my Stunt Dogs jacket. I wouldn't have given it to you, but I would have brought it and you could have looked at it. Yeah. Oh my God. Richard Fungus. Oh, this character screamed and yelled. I wouldn't even attempt to do it today because this vein in my forehead would stand out to about here if I did. Probably pop all over you. But he has, what a crazy character.
And he always hated being called a dick.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you see, there's that little innuendo again. Call me Dick. And that's probably why it isn't really popular today. See? Further to my point. But thank you for remembering, man. Is this for me?
Oh, go ahead, keep it, man.
Well, thank you. I was going to anyway. You're ever seeing this again. Thank you. I got to tell you, I've had drawings of me done as Toad and as Beastly. No one's ever done Fungus, and that is a hell of a likeness. Good for you, man.
I would have done Bugsy Vile too, but...
Oh, Bugsy. Bugsy Vile from Dog City. And the landlord. Bugsy. Yes, sir.
So, I just want to bring up, so Nintendo, they did a lot with the Mario series, and I'll admit, compared to Super Mario Bros. Super Show, a lot of people think that that's just a joke show, and that's like nothing like Nintendo. But, when I saw Toad on the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, I realized something. He had a lot more character than Toad in the video games.
Yeah. Well, thank you, because I didn't do the video games.
But you did something, in my opinion, you did something better than what Nintendo themselves did. Like,
Well, thank you. Thank you, but you know what? I won't accept all the credit. I had a sort of a... Video games don't really have... they have a script.
Yeah.
However, it's not a flowing... There's no story, really. You know what I mean? It's like... It's bits and pieces, and, stuff stuck all over the place. Like I said, thank you. So,
But I really have to thank you for doing
but,
this.
well, thank you. Well,
Toad was my favorite.
Toad was a great character to do. And it's one of the ones, like a lot of them, I'll be honest, I don't remember where I did them or when I did them. Or I know that's probably a factor of getting older and losing a good part of my memory. But a lot of it is because, and to be quite honest, I've been blessed with having had a really busy career. And it's like a lot of things. It's like they say, can you list all the cars you've had? And I'll bet you, by the time you're 40, you think, geez, did I have a Dodge? Did I have a, and for me, and you probably had 7 cars or 6 cars, and for me, having done seriously hundreds of either guest roles or regulars, series roles or movies and all that stuff, it's hard to remember. But I remember doing Toad specifically, and it's funny. I did it in a little studio that always did, and it was loaded with like religious paraphernalia because and it was called The Masters Workshop. And it was, and they did choral Christian music in this facility. And I was always walking in, it was like, geez, it's really comfortable in here for some reason. It's really calm. Everybody's really calm. And I remember working on the series there, and it was nice because, and I don't know how many of you were in the other panel, but most animation is recorded in individuals. One person comes in and does all of their lines. The next person comes in and does all of their lines. And then maybe a week later, due to scheduling or whatever, your other 4 people will come in over the space of 2 days and do all of their lines. Or sometimes you got a whole bunch of people with little roles, and it's scheduled so that you have 8 people recording in a day. All, and maybe for 2 episodes. This was done in what is called ensemble recording, so that everybody was done at the same time. There's a different feel to recording with other people. You know, it does in some ways. If you always did that, it would make my job as a voice director superfluous, because you would hear context. If someone asked you a question, you would know how to answer it in the script. As a voice director, if I've got one person coming in and I'm only hearing one side of the conversation, in my head, I've got to imagine the other side of the conversation so that I know the context of how everyone's answering, right? But that was done ensemble, and it was really, really interesting. And if you're a Toad fan, you should know that just a few months ago, a dear friend of mine who played Luigi, Danny Wells, died. He was 72. He had cancer. He didn't even tell anybody. He said, yeah, he had kids in LA, and he said, yeah, I'm going back to LA for a while. Lived in Toronto. He said, I'm going back to LA to visit my kids, and he never really went. He went into the hospital, and that's where he passed away. He was a sweet, sweet man.
This is the voice actor from the show?
The voice actor, Danny Wells. Yeah, he played Luigi. And yeah, you know, it's none of us getting out of here alive, so you know. But he was a real sweet guy, and I got to actually finally voice direct him, because I worked as a performer with him. A series that's just come on now, a Disney series called Ella the Elephant, which is a very sweet series. I'm promoting it sort of gently. It's already on the air. I don't, you know, it's a kids series, but it's really, really sweet. You guys probably wouldn't like it, but watch one episode. Just, it's interesting to see where, you know, if you're students of the animation game, and a lot of you are anime specifically fans, but you know, it's only part of the big picture. And to watch where animation is today and where it's going, and what's happening with some of the shows, it's interesting. You know, watching how Disney is sort of super sweet. You know, if I ever cast for Disney, it's always the call is, I want a Disney mom. I need a Disney mom. Because Disney moms are, oh honey, that's a lovely book you've just written. Do you think I can have that? Why don't you sign in front? Jeez. There's no mother in the world that's really like that, except for Disney. Anyway, it's just interesting. It's a sweet show to watch. You know, catch one episode, walk away and throw up later because it's so saccharine. Somebody's got to have a question. Yes! Sorry, I'll get you after. There aren't that many of you asking, so.
So did you ever work with the
In the live action,
yeah.
Captain Lou Albano.
Yeah.
I did meet him, but he did the live action, and in the animation, it was done by I just had his name. Walker Boone was his name. Walker Boone did the voice in the animation, and Lou Albano and Danny though. Actually, I'm sorry. You know what? Danny did the voice, and he was Luigi in the on camera as well.
Wait, who?
Danny Wells, the fellow that passed away, was not only the voice of Luigi in the cartoon series, he was the on-camera Luigi as well. Okay, the skinny guy, Lou was the fat guy, and he was the skinny guy. And it was still skinny. Further to your question, I did meet him a couple of times, but we didn't really overlap because I was voice, right? And so all my stuff was kind of sort of done in a segregated fashion. But a couple times I did meet him, he was a nice guy. He's been gone for like 20 odd years, I think, eh? Boy, hey, there's my Canadian coming out. He's been gone for 20 odd years, I think. 90, is it 86 or 96? It must have been 96. So 18 years. Ouch. Sir.
Could you talk a bit about your on-screen camera work?
Oh boy, that's a short story. That's a real short story. I mean, it's fun. I've done a few on-camera things. The ones that are most memorable to me right now are the ones I still get residuals from. Because it's great. I did a film called Look Who's Talking Now. And I had a 10-day, I was on the set for 10 days. I was living in Toronto at the time. I live rurally now. I have a 13-acre country place. That's where I live. But I was living in Toronto at the time. And they flew me to Vancouver where it was filmed. And it was wonderful. I mean, they flew me first class. That's a long flight. Toronto to Vancouver is, I don't know, 6 hours, something like that. Or 5 hours anyway. And I only worked, I think, for 2.5 of those days. And ultimately, my presence on screen lasts, it's like nothing. I mean, 2 little tiny scenes, but they still pay me residuals for it. And it's fun. On camera, they treat you really, really well. As voice work, you don't get, there are very few perks in terms of voice work. If you're a regular on a series, maybe you'll get a watch or maybe a pen or post-it notes. Boy. But when you do a film, often you will get a jacket. The stuff that you can sell it on eBay. It's great. And they treated me really, really well. They feed you. They give you a per diem, plus they feed you. So here's some money for meals. Dinner's on. Didn't you just give me money for meals? Oh yeah, don't worry about that. Just put it in your pocket. And food all day, and it's great. And I did a movie called The Big Hit. I got I've got a small role in that. It was cast. The casting notice went out, and everybody in here is old enough. So-and-so, the neighbor, he's an asshole. So that was the character that I did. I got one line. As I say, about every 3 weeks I get a check. Sometimes it's $4, and sometimes it's like $100. And it's great. I mean, that's the beauty of doing film work. I've done some other stuff. I worked with William Shatner on a film called Kidnapping of the President, which you'll probably never see. Thank God. You'll never see it. And in terms of series work, well, years and years ago I did some work that you will never see because I believe the originals were destroyed, the original stuff, but it was a really formative time for me in my career. And for some other performers, I'm sure that you know of John Candy, Dan Aykroyd, Gilda Radner. All the SCTV gang, or a lot of them, Andrea Martin. All these people were on this show called Coming Up Rosie. Our guests were Martin Short, Dave Flaherty, Dave Thomas. It was a real who's who of that era of comedy. Most of those guys are still around. Of course, starting to lose them now, but that was a really wonderful, wonderful time of my life. And that was an on-camera. That was an on-camera time of my life. I've done the usual. I've done lots of on-camera commercials. I don't anymore. I find it's demeaning in some ways to performers. It's great. You can make some really serious money. The older I get, the less important that becomes to me, and simply the quality of work that I'm doing. I would never say that necessarily to someone just getting into the business. There's a time for being basically a whore to the industry, where you can make your inroads and make some money and get established. But then after a certain point, it becomes less important, and you start realizing that the things you do in life are not, and the real accomplishments in life don't always generate money. They generate good feeling, and they generate, I mean, I know this sounds real corny, but honestly, the older I get, I buy into it 100%. You know, it becomes real quality as opposed to quantity. So anyway, I like the voice industry the best. It's provided me with not only a nice living, but it provides me with free time. Because as you say, I live in the country. I lived in different country places for almost 25 years now. And I'd rather be out in my bush cutting wood, digging a garden, than auditioning people for a show. I'm going to still enjoy that, but it becomes more and more, that's what I do for a living. This is what I do for my life. I guess I turned everybody off on that. No, it's just true. It's just things change. That's one of the beautiful things about getting older, is realizing and appreciating and knowing that there's a place for all the stuff when you're young, and it's great, right? It's wonderful to reflect, because I've been, you know. Anybody else? Surely, God, someone's got some question. Something that means nothing. Please. Interestingly enough, thank you, interesting question. Never had that question before. Sailor Moon was recorded, the question was, for those of you who didn't hear it, is the studio where Sailor Moon was recorded still operational? Well, yes and no. Sailor Moon did the rounds. There were certain financial issues, and I can't point fingers because it's all hearsay, so I won't. There were just, some people didn't get paid, and some people didn't get paid enough, and some people, it was paid really weirdly, because performers would go in and do, an hour one day and then 2 hours the next. And sometimes dubbing is paid on an hourly basis, sometimes it's paid on a per line, whichever is greater. I'd be called in to voice direct maybe 2 hours, and then I'd be in for like 10 hours the next day, but the episode numbers were all over the place, because we do an hour on one episode and 2 hours on another, and my agent and I were trying to bill by the hour, and it was, finally, we both said, look, you know what, whatever we get paid, that's what I'm out. That's fine. Life is too short to worry about another $30. I just couldn't do it. And so, the studios went through that same issue. Sailor Moon was recorded at, I think, 5 different studios. Yeah. 2 of them, and what would happen is, they would, from what I'm told, again, is they would bring in the equipment, because when you're dubbing, what you've got is a screen, and in the old days, the way we did it was something called a rhythmoband, where you had, on the screen, you had the visual of the characters. There was no music and effects track, because that was lifted separately, and certainly in Sailor Moon, that was all cut up, because though they used some Japanese basic music, they didn't use Japanese lyrics. And some music was new, so it was kind of a hybrid of a whole bunch of things. And underneath that was something called a rhythmoband, which was the new track, handwritten, with different hieroglyphics kind of on it, where you would elongate words. They were to aid the performer in knowing that you were elongating a vowel, or that something was abruptly being cut off, or that there was a gasp, or a little caret meant that there was a in the middle. All kinds of different things. So there was a fair bit of equipment that was brought in, and you'd be running 2 sets of video at the same time, and that they would have to lock. We'd always say, we got lock, got locked. Digital today, it's like a nanosecond and it's ready to go. Back then, it took time to set everything up. So it was somewhat at that point, advanced equipment today would be ancient, but it was expensive. If the production company didn't have the money to pay the studio, well, the studio would simply say, you ain't getting your equipment. And so the doors would be locked to them. The studio would work on other projects, but that equipment never was released unless the studio got paid what the studio was owed. So that's why Sailor Moon went to several different studios. I do a fair bit. I voice directed and once the Ereticai that I talked to you about before, Totally Spies, Amazing Spies, a whole bunch of other stuff at one particular studio. It's still active and original owners. The last studio that it was recorded at, the owner, I don't know if he went bankrupt or he sold out. It's going to be the same situation with some of the same equipment. Of course, it's going to be technologically more advanced as it would be, every 3 days, pretty much. But it's kind of funny that I get to revisit that studio for the first time since I stopped recording Sailor Moon, I guess 18 years ago. I'm sorry? Oh, Long Arm. Thank you for remembering. Long Arm is a great character. I always get picked to be these really nice guys. Right, Long Arm O'Malley was his name. I remember, and if I may, I don't remember a lot from it. I remember saying it's crime fighting time. I played a New York cop. And the opportunity arose in, I think, 3 episodes of the series where I played my own father. My dad was an Irish cop. Do you remember? You're nodding. Do you know the series? No? Okay. It is nodding because, I know, I do the bobblehead thing sometimes too. I played my own dad, and he was an Irish cop, and he'd always say, son, I gotta tell you something. When you're out fighting crime, right? And he would go through this whole routine, and it was a great series. I'd never gotten to play my own father before, but it's actually Cops is making somewhat of a comeback because it was released, I think, less than a year ago. It got pardon? Right, 85, 86. It was 2 seasons, I believe, and it's just been released on DVD. So, I don't make any money from it, so I can say, go and buy it. It's a fun series. It's a good series, a lot of wacky. It's kind of, it was fun, again, because it was just a little silly. It was, the characters were wacky. It's great, because it was today, again, I talk about being a student of the game and understanding where animation. All of it now is so kind of straight. I know when I'm asked to cast things and they say, we want real people. There's no actors, aren't there? Real people. So they want straight voices. Sure, you get the odd SpongeBob or Animaniacs or, and I'm not talking about adult animation either. I'm talking about, the teen and kid animation. It's all so straight. It's all like the characters that used to be really over the top now sound like people you'd hear on the street, right? And it's different. And the difference. See, now I say now we do animation. In the old days, we did cartoons, and I know that's semantics, but in my head, there's a big difference. That show was kind of on the border because there are a lot of straight deliveries and that. But then you had all those wacky guys doing all this crazy stuff. And it was fun. It was fun to do. Bad Vibes. Yeah. Wow. See, this is one of the reasons, I swear to God, it's one of the reasons I love doing these, is because people remind me of stuff that I'm talking about forgetting. And trust me, it doesn't make me a happy guy that I forget stuff. But You know, people come in and or else they'll bring a picture or a poster or something to sign. That's some character that I haven't thought about in 20 years. And it's great. It's really great because suddenly there's that flood of, oh my God, I did, oh yeah, and I worked with so-and-so, yeah, well, and I worked with her, oh, I think she's dead. And I worked with her, you know, he's in politics now. He's not an actor. Oh, wait a minute, same thing. The what? The cable? Oh, that. That was Long Arm First, I bet you. Oh, wait, you know. Yeah. That was the big pulley thing with the grip thing, right? Yeah. The extender cups. Thank you. Wow. See, this is great. It's enlightening. I appreciate it. Yeah. Holy moly. Okay, you come by. I got a booth in the vendor's room. I'm going to sign you a free long arm thing. I got a card with a picture of long arm. Bugsy? Okay. All right. Seriously. If you're here, I don't even know if I did this. Did you? Well, okay. Well, I have a rogues gallery available. Questiones? You look like you have a question, but you're not ready to ask it. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, see? You had that look.
What was like the hardest part about being like a director and stuff?
The hardest part? You know, interesting. I've never been asked that either. The toughest part I find is not, some people might think, if I can go to this, approach it this way, might think that understanding, because as a voice director, I've got, and there's a difference by the between being director and voice director. The director is way above me. The voice director has to make sure that all the lines are delivered properly, and that that dialogue sounds like dialogue, conversation sounds like conversation. For me, understanding a whole script, because when I did more performing than voice directing, and now I do more voice directing than voice performing, I would always read. I'm very old school. You get a part in a show, in a script, you read the whole script. You don't just like look at your lines, because then you've got a context. You should know why your character suddenly appears. You should know more than just what he does, but the results of his appearance later, because that will color and affect the way you deliver your lines and your performance. So I was always sort of old school and I was printed my own script, or before the days of emailing, I would make sure I was sent a script so that I could look at the whole thing. I was one of very few guys who would do that. I still am. So when I made the transition to doing more voice directing, and when I had to know the whole script and how every line was delivered, it was kind of a no-brainer. I had to study it more and be a little bit more astute. But that wasn't a big transition, and that wasn't really onerous for me. I think the toughest part is an emotional one. Because sometimes, I think as a voice director, I have to have like a producer's head, but I can't lose my performer's heart. Right? So I've got to be really sympathetic, because those are my fellow people out there. They're actors. I'm an actor. Whether guys, gals, when I say guys, please forgive me, I mean the community as a whole. So, and sometimes I've got to say to someone will say, I really want to deliver the line this way. Say, I appreciate it, I understand it, I can make it work, but this is the edict that I've got. I can't let you do that, because that's not really the character, and I know it'll make the line maybe flow a little bit more smoothly or whatever. I can't let you do that. And I also have to go to the producers sometimes and say, you got to cut this. Sometimes I work with kids, my job's on the line sometimes, but I have to. So I think you're coming down a little hard. You got a 9-year-old in there, right? He can't work today. I know you're going to lose money. You got to send him home. He's having trouble. I can tell his mom and dad are out in the waiting room, and they're beefing with each other. And that kid's had a tough day, and you can't make him work. You're gonna run into trouble. And if not for this show, somewhere down the line, that kid's gonna be affected. And you can't do it. And so that's the toughest part. It's an emotional one, where I feel, and maybe it's self-imposed, but I'm so often asked to be that liaison between production and performance, and it's not an easy one to follow all the time. But it's kind of nice to, that said, it's kind of nice to have pressure on you sometimes. I guess my ego says it makes me feel more important. I don't know. Anybody else, please? Yeah, please.
I know you played a few characters on Arthur.
Yes.
The poet.
The poet that was arrested in the Big Key Street where we had to ride.
Yeah, it's based on a real character.
I had a feeling.
Yeah, that's based on. Yeah, it's funny. I remember doing that. I did. The question, the statement was, I did a role in Arthur, the series Arthur, and I played a poet who was arrested. And I'm trying to think of who it was based on, because they actually told me who it was based on. Do you know the name of the real person? Because I read the script, and this was sort of not an afterthought on their part, but suddenly they said, oh, here's the background on the character. And, oh, really? Wow, okay. Didn't change my performance, but it's nice to know. I always say that, because I also teach voice, I teach animation and commercial voice delivery, and I always say the more background you've got into any character, and it applies more to animation certainly. The more background, the more feel you've got, whatever you can dig up on that character, the better, the more it enhances your character development and your performance. That's why when you read a script, an animated script, 5 minutes. Okay. I'm being told I have 5 minutes. I always say read everything in the script, read every little note, read everything. That's again why I talk about reading the entire script and being prepared, even though you've only got 15 lines in the script. Read the whole script, because you never know when something is going to be mentioned about your character or about the characters you're playing against. That says, that indicates that the character you're playing against is an angry person. Well, suddenly you come in and you're whoever you are, and you can sense that the line that other person's saying, I can take that a couple of ways. Oh, but they said she was angry. So it gives you a leg up on how to deliver your line. Maybe defensively, because it's probably going to be delivered harshly to you. Right? So all those little bits and pieces help you in your study of the character. Okay, we've got 3.5 minutes left. I guess we can call it. Thank you all very, very much. I know it's a small group, but it was an intense one, and it's nice when people don't walk out. But thanks. You let me throw out my heart a little bit, and that's always appreciated. And I do appreciate your interest in what I do what I've done for 4.5 decades.